Welcome, friends. Welcome back to another edition of Ed Hartman's Wild World of Music and Film. In this edition, we are going to be talking to actor, producer, maybe director? I don't know. Yeah? A few other
happened.
things. It's happened. Okay. Kenneth Hughes. Not related to John Hughes, I'm guessing.
No, but I am related to Howard Hughes.
Really?
No, I wish.
Well, I'm related to Harv Bennett.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Anyway, my mother's cousin. Yeah. Lots of stories on that. Anyway, Kenneth, welcome to the program. And I've been enjoying watching a few of your films that you've produced. We're going to talk about two of them, I believe. The Confessions of a Teenage Jesus Jerk, which is one of the great names of all time.
You're going to get banned. You better watch out. You've said our name. Usually they say Confessions and peter out.
Okay. And then Vampire Burt's Serenade, which is off the charts, bizarre. Anyway, and I want to know about that. So I'm thinking we start with Jesus Jerk.
Great.
Because it's a little older. It's from 2017, right?
Yeah.
And it has, I kind of reviewed it again and listened to the music. I'm a composer as well, so besides producer. So the point of this interview has to do with music in general, but it's also about the movie, and we can talk about anything we want. There's no rules here. But I'm curious, we'll get into that, how you made your decisions about that. And, of course, you as a producer versus Eric Stoltz, who did the directing. Obviously, there's more than one person involved in the decision-making on this stuff. So
Yeah, definitely.
Before, actually, we talk about the movie, on my 10 questions from James, what's his name, interview with the vampire
yes.
guy, whatever. What am I talking about? Anyway, so where are you from and where are you living now? And we'd like your address and zip code and social security number.
to send hate mail and hack me. I grew up in Los Angeles and still live in Los Angeles, so I'm one of those rare locals. And as we say, it's our big little small town. For those of us that grew up here, we have a kind of a tight group that all grew up together and doing different things. That's where I am.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, and Seattle is kind of like that. I'm actually from Chicago area, and I moved to Seattle many years ago. And there's definitely kind of a Seattle-based core people that but Seattle is full of many people from elsewhere.
Right. Transplant. Yeah. I mean,
everything on the West Coast pretty much.
Well, there's a big local community, and it's a very, very diverse, huge area. So there's a lot of diversity all over. But there is obviously, in showbiz, I always say if I was from a coal mining town, I would have been a coal miner. I happen to be from, a showbiz town, so I, fell into this. But it is interesting. It's different. It's a very different experience to be a local from here, and then you're surrounded by the dominant industry is all transplants, 99%. And there's a certain thing that comes with that. A disdain, all kinds of different things. I mean, obviously there's others that move here and love it, but that's an interesting aspect to grow up in this town. And it's funny. I've been internationally to every film festival there is, and in every country I've ever gone to, they always have a huge amount of support for their local filmmaking. And LA is completely the opposite.
Right.
You just have to, it's just a very different experience being from here as far as, and being a filmmaker.
Well, I've been down there actually just a few times even this year, since the summer for the Burbank Film Festival for a documentary I did, and then also the Silicon Beach, which was at the Chinese theater,
Right.
which was fun.
Yeah.
And it's getting people to events is a real trip because there's so many. I mean,
Yeah.
so the idea of getting people to screenings is virtually impossible down there.
Yeah, it's a whole different beast, and it's really interesting to travel. I've been to Cannes, I've been to Sundance, I've been to huge festivals, small festivals, and it's really interesting to see the different experience as far as being an independent filmmaker. And I've always been a strange bird in that I sort of have one foot in the industry and get hired and work in the industry, and then I have one foot out of the industry and do my own projects. And the two have not really come together. And that's been okay on a certain level. So there's pros and cons to that.
That's not unusual. I mean, as a I have my own stuff that I do, and then I work for other people as well. So yeah, there's always kind of two sides. You're kind of a work for hire person or self-employed in this business, or a little combination of both, half and half.
Yeah, and I think my tastes probably, unfortunately, are so digressive from mainstream stuff, and I'm happy to get hired to do whatever whatever they're willing to pay my union wages for. I love it. I do. But I also really enjoy making things that are super risky, super controversial, potentially super unique in the voices that are involved. And I'm addicted to it, to the point where it's tragic almost, because I do these things that everyone's like, oh no, what are you gonna do with this?
Not another one of those.
Yeah, right. And with that comes the risks and the challenges, as far as every other aspect, because if you kind of know up front that you're not very likely going to make money on something, you're already at a really unusual in a strange position where you're like, okay, maybe this one will somehow.
Well, I think Vampire Burt has definite midnight potential.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any midnight movies anymore. Is the problem.
Right. Well, and that's been a whole other thing, because there's a lot of small theaters, and there's a lot of really interesting midnight showings of things all over, and those are really fun. But it's tricky, and of course with COVID, all that stuff just completely dried up. Right. And so we'll see. I'm always curious how to navigate. I managed to get really interesting people involved, and that's partially growing up here, and it's partially speaking the artist's language of basically saying, look, we don't have to answer to anyone. Yeah. We get to do what we want to do. But we're not going to have coffee in the morning. Are you up for that?
Right.
And those that jump to it, I being one of those people, it's a lot of fun, to get really, to take risks, to do things, and to collaborate in a way that's very different from, the rank and file approach to things.
Yeah. All right. So what was your start? I assume on the film side, how did you we're talking about Confessions of a Teenage Jesus?
No,
I'm talking about you.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Well, I told you the whole coal mine story. I was I grew up, in LA, going to school, doing my thing. I think early on I was exposed to kind of the early days of punk rock in the city, and that sort of altered my notions of what is acceptable.
Right.
And then I continued on with performing. I went into performing first, and I was actually dancer and an actor, and I traveled the world doing that. Had a great time. I was exposed to a lot of incredible people, famous people.
What kind of dance?
I did it all. I toured with
Really?
companies. I danced with Sprite cans in commercials. I did all kinds of things. So that was an amazing experience for a young man in the city to be exposed to, and perhaps a slightly misguided young man. So it was perfect. And then I got really involved in kind of the small theater scene with dance and with acting. And so between that, and working on big budget things and working on no budget things, was really a lot of fun. And like, here's an interesting footnote. LA has the most theaters per capita in the country. You wouldn't really know that, but there's just tons of tiny little theaters that there are very inspired people that want to try things, and so I managed to kind of connect with, like I say, both sides in that, and it always stayed that way because I always had an appreciation for both experiences, for the experimental or the odd or the ridiculous or the midnight type theater experiences that had free beer with a ticket, and then I also had that other experience of working on commercials and films and that sort of thing. So I enjoyed both experiences, which was really nice.
And then did you evolve? How did you evolve from maybe performing to directing, producing?
Good. That's a good question. So after that, for a while, I it was very strange. I had there was a few different projects that I were doing that were really small, short films and things like that. But I never imagined that I could actually do features, and features, back then was the thing. Now, anything's the thing. But features were kind of like, that unreachable project that I became interested in. And the interesting bridge was I was asked to do films for a dance show at the Ford Theater by a woman named Kitty, who has a company called Hysterica Dance Company, and an amazing company. And I ended up doing about 40 minutes of content for that live show. And in that moment, I went, wait a second, I did 40 minutes of content. What's another 30 minutes to have a feature, or 30, and so that's where that kind of like bridge came. And the first project was, just as I always called it, kind of my thesis film, which was this crazy film that I did called Bad Dog and Superhero, and I wrote it with the intention that I'm just going to get as crazy as I want to get. I'm not going to write it to sell tickets. I'm not going to appeal to anyone. I'm just going to blow up my ideas and see what I can do. And it took a while, but I finished it for probably, I don't know, $800 or something, ridiculous, but an amazing lesson. And that was the first film. And that's when I tasted it. And I also was getting hired for producing things, lots of industrial shows and, dance in like we had the big gaming convention down here called E3, I think it was called. So, Sony hired me to do all these 40-foot visuals and all these other things. So I was always sharpening my teeth on a lot of different events, theater and live events, and little snippets for whatever thing, websites, all kinds of little things that I was being hired for. So that kind of sharpened my teeth, but I was always pulling on you could say my circle to do the features. And then I did the 1 and 2 and 3, and I'm up to about 4 or 5 now, and another one coming. And once I tasted that first time, though, as in producing, it wasn't so much that I wanted to be a producer, it's that I wanted to try different stories. And I wanted to play with different groups of people that wouldn't normally necessarily get hired. That's where it came from me. So you could say, I always say my filmmaking is like small theater in a way. It's just home cooked, get a bunch of people and it's like, okay, let's put on a show. Okay, and we sort of march along. So that's where it came from me. And so it went.
And there's an evolution from director to producer, or vice versa. It seems people wind up as producers later. Sometimes to just be part of the production, you can be an actor and be a producer or whatever to get points in the movie.
Yeah,
but executive producer is another level. That's where you're pretty much in charge. I'm really fascinated by that as I kind of evolve into that myself.
Interesting.
And, it's kind of scary because you in the end you're kind of where everything stops.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is a more traditional notion of the titles. For me, the titles became, I mean, my first film, I think as a joke, we had 20 associate producers. So we just started giving whoever wanted it.
Best boy, producer, you got it.
Yeah. It's like, so, and it has been my practice. I try, to, I really think of it as a home,
right.
Cook home cooking, like everybody come in, what do you want to make? And I tend to work that way, in the sense that I don't covet titles. I don't, if somebody, my thing is, how much effort did you put into the film? And great, let me kind of give you some fair amount to that.
Well, but there is a difference that in Confessions of a Teenage Jesus Jerk, you brought in, or somebody brought in, Eric Stoltz to do that. That's a pretty major leap, as opposed to saying, well, I think I'll direct this or not, and it's one thing to just have somebody direct it, but you're bringing a pretty known name in there. What was the evolution on that?
Well, so all my films, if you look at that, all my films are filled with known names. Yeah. My very first film, I have a Tony Award winner opposite, lead. I have if you look at any of my cast and crew and you actually get down into them, you see that, wow, these are actually people. So, and what I've always tried to, for myself, I've always felt there's a distinction between the business and the art. And sometimes those cross over and sometimes those don't. But when I work with people, I'm usually looking often for these artists that, even if they made no money, they'd still be doing this stuff.
Right.
And I have found, as I say, my low picking fruit are these artists that are kind of doing the same thing and getting bored. And they can be on the biggest show in the world, and it doesn't matter. I assure you, at some point they're bored. And if I come along with the right thing at the right time, I say low-lying fruit. I just pluck them. So Eric was a great. I told him some of the ridiculous stories that were going on with some. I actually knew him through our kids. Actually, used to play together, and I always liked him as a person. He was just a really upstanding person. And I was just telling him about these films one day, and he sort of seemed to indicate he was kind of interested. And I said, well, there's no coffee. There's no, I almost tried to talk him out of it in a way. And he was really interested. He was really interested in the mess and the mayhem and still, making it happen. And that was very moving. And so I said, what do you want to do? He didn't know. What do you want to do? He showed me one movie. He gave me a script, which was wonderfully written, perfect for a studio. And I said, Eric, this is fantastic for a studio. We need something that proves that we're independent, that we're, I wouldn't have the money to do this. I wouldn't be able to do tricks with this, no smoke and mirrors, nothing. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I had a buddy, his name's Tony Duchesne, and I actually met through a film festival that he used to run in San Francisco, I think with my first film. My first film was in his festival in San Francisco, and we stayed buddies. And he is a writer, and he had a remarkable personal story that I used to always say to him, you need to write this as a book, which eventually he actually did do. And I had a lovely little, appreciation note in it, and I really was moved by that. And it was a moving book, and basically he was a Jehovah Witness in the 80s kind of punk rock scene. The two, he was kind of came together in a volatile combination. And we were talking about him writing a script. I say, what are you doing with the book? And he said, oh, it's optioned. And I said, oh yeah, that's fine. And then a week or two later, he said, you're not going to believe it, my book is out of option. And I said, well, you're kidding. I said to him, look, you know how I do it. There's no money. You sure you want to do this? The only thing I can say is I'll get it done. That's the only promise I make, which is a pretty good promise, for down here. And I showed it to Eric, and coincidentally, he read it. I want to say it was almost overnight. And he called me back and he said, I love this story. And I said, wow, okay, great. Well, let me talk to Tony and work it out. And he also said, which was very funny, in the book, there's a section where the kids are watching over and over, they're rewinding a video over and over of this topless woman coming out of a pool, which was a section from the movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which was Eric Stoltz's first movie. That was his girlfriend who was coming out of the water. And he said, Kenny, when I covered that part, he goes, I knew this was, I had to do this. So anyway, Yeah, how about that? Restless. Anyway,
That's funny.
so yeah, so that's kind of how it came about, and then it's one step after. It was writing the script. So Eric did a tremendous amount of work helping adapt the book, and Tony, uh, was very good with that. Um, and then we got the script. I think that was about a year or more process, and then we just kind of pieced it together. Eric, of course, brought an incredible cast, and then I was also, I had a friend that did casting on it, and she brought kind of the young one. The young people in it were not known,
Yeah.
most of them, all of them actually. So that was, we really had a national search to find these people that A, were going to be open to this style of filmmaking, and B, were going to make the cut, for what Eric needed. So
Who's the kid who plays the groom toward the end?
the
He
groom.
looked, well, he not the well, the fiance of the girl that the lead woman.
Oh, oh my gosh.
He looked real familiar. I felt like I should know him, and
Oh
I
God.
couldn't figure it out. But
You're talking about the one that the lead was in love with,
yeah, yeah.
and then her actual, um oh my gosh, I'm
Well, that's all
blanking.
right. That's right. I'm just curious. We would come back to it.
Yeah, well, and all of them kind of went on to, I mean, as I always say, I don't know what it is, there's some kind of weird magic, but everybody that and maybe this is just me, but overly inflating, but everybody that's worked on my films, it feels like a great many of them go on to greatness, and
Wow,
I just wave
wow.
from afar, hello up there, but
Yeah,
I haven't
I wonder if
noticed
that
that.
kid was in like Cobra Kai or something. Maybe that's where I'm.
You're talking about, hang on, I know who you're talking about. Jeez, I'm, yeah,
I'm
I'm
thinking,
sorry.
wait, he looks like an '80s actor. You know, like he looks like
Yeah,
Eric
I think
Stoltz.
I think if you're talking so the guy that you're talking about, hang on, he I don't think he was doing a lot. Uh
But he had a really typical kind of actor.
Brad, yeah, his name's Brad. He played John. Is that who you're talking
I
about?
can't
Yeah, I think you're
remember.
talking about
Yeah.
Brad. Uh, how do you say his last name? Bukowskis. Bukowskis.
Okay.
I loved working with him. Actually, he was one
Well,
of the.
speaking of the actors, Sasha Feldman, I think I mentioned this in the email. I've decided that he is a love child of James Franco and Stephen Strait.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You did say
I don't
that.
know what is. I kept looking at this kid. I go, God, that's like a ringer for either one of them. And those guys are like brothers from other mothers anyway.
Yeah.
I confuse them. I was watching The Expanse. Why is James Franco in this? I mean, no, it's not. Anyway, great actor. No, he did a nice subdued, underperformed kind of a feel on that. And there's a lot of interesting things in the filmmaking on that. I was thinking the Harry Met Sally commentary that pops in and out
Yeah.
from the survivors.
Yeah. Right. Well, so and that was
That was
so
wild.
James Karen, like James Karen was the main guy that was doing that. And if you look him up, that guy has done every movie on the planet, and he coincidentally lived in the condos that I lived in Los Feliz,
Oh
and I'd
wow.
see him
Okay.
every day. He was in his 90s. He's passed since this, and it was, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but he was just like this heirloom to have.
Yeah.
And me and Eric, fell in love with him and his stories, and he was just a remarkable guy and character to have on the
Well, it
set.
added a whole different feel to it, and I don't know what I'm calling this movie because, it's not like a laugh out loud comedy or anything like that. It's a dramedy, heavy on the drama, and then the comedy kind of pops out a little bit here and there, but it's more of an atmospheric fable,
That's
something like
interesting.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric did a great job in capturing the book. I think the book has a certain heaviness and darkness.
Yeah, yeah,
uh the writer was on the set. Well, I mean, if you sit, so there's a whole community of XJW, they call it EXJW. You can search it anywhere now. Ex Jehovah Witnesses are like survivors. They have an abuse level that they've survived. They have an incredible personal challenge that so few people understand. And getting to know that community, it has been a very moving, very powerful experience. And I've sat in theaters, watching screenings at festivals and things, and literally I watched. I remember in particular in San Francisco we had a screening, and there was two women right next to me, and this is my invisible, very proud point, is that these two women, I mean, I watched them have every emotional experience you can imagine. And their whole thing was afterwards, they didn't know that I was producing. And Eric was right next to me. We were in the back, and she was sitting next to us, and she goes, they called us out at the end of the movie, and she went, "Oh my God," she's covered in tears, and she said, "This was my life experience.
Wow.
You caught the details so well that I've almost just melted away over here." Yeah. And it brought it back. And on one level, of course, it's horrible to torture somebody with that. But on the other hand, for me, it was an incredible honor and a mission to make it as accurate as possible. And Tony was on the set. And, the nuance of this cult, it has a lot of nuances about it. And he would correct people, what they would say, the words, what they would, do or not do constantly. And Eric honored that to the nth degree. I mean, really weirdly, Tony had sort of veto on anything that didn't match the Jehovah's Witness experience, and he was a master of what it was. And that was really powerful. And if you listen to, there's a bunch of XJWs that feature the film and talk about it, and we also got targeted by Jehovah's Witnesses. They some group of them one day went to all the social medias and trashed us, and all the film reviews. They marked it down, and literally one day we were, whatever we were, 7 star or whatever out of 10. All of a sudden we were 2, like in 2 days. So, flash flood. Yeah, we were targeted, and slowly the algorithms filtered that out. But that was really a powerful thing to be a part of.
Well, and I think you did a good job of kind of separating out the religion from the actions.
Right.
It treated people with respect. It wasn't like you're coming in and satirizing them or something like that.
No. Yeah, it wasn't.
It was very sympathetic to what was going on.
You're right, and that's an important aspect. Was there's an innocence. The thing about children being raised in a religion, it's an innocent experience, and really, as we always said, we can't beat a dead horse. You let people decide what it is. There's people, as we pointed out in the movie, we actually had to add a line in this film, which was about why are people drawn to this religion? Why do they need it? Why does it make them better? And that is an aspect, So to kind of summarize, you were saying the tone of the film, what is it? And so it has this dark backdrop, but it does have this kind of tongue-in-cheek looseness of what it is coming of age, and then God in the corner telling you how bad you are, but oh my God, my hormones are screaming.
In the midst of that, it's a teen romp.
Right, exactly. A relentless teen romp.
Right. Well, I guess we ought to talk about some music. What the hell? So I kind of went through it again. And basically, it's interesting. From the opening point, you have this kind of shimmering atmospheric stuff. Now, your composer was Brian Byrne. And it looked like he's kind of up and coming guy. I don't know how old he is or whatever. I'm guessing L.A. Guy.
He's actually, so Eric, in his real life, is a big TV producer and director. He works on Boston Legal, Glee, was it Madam Secretary, on and on and on. I can't even keep up with the shows that he's on. So he came from that background, and he asked this guy who I think works on a lot of their shows, and this guy kindly.
He did a lot of arranging and stuff like that. He had the kind of music production side, for sure.
Yeah, and
a lot of experience on that.
and it's tough for this film, because ultimately what this film is gonna want is that a bunch of 80s music and a bunch
Right.
of stuff that we couldn't make happen.
Yeah.
um we were able to trick it out. I think we got I can't remember, we got one or two songs that we
We
were
got
able to.
"Do You Love Me," that
Right.
tune, and that I was impressed. I was thinking, well, there's your music budget right there.
Right. It's funny that you know this. It's kind of neat that because I rarely does somebody
Oh
understand
no, no,
this
that's
aspect.
got to be 80% of what you spent.
There was I can't remember, and again, I think as I recall, Eric worked that out through his
Well,
music
that was the
people.
original recording too. That wasn't even a cover, so
Yeah.
you had to pay double for that.
Yeah, there was a milking out, but I think he was able to work something out because when you have a platform and you're able to say, hey, you get a lot of money from these other things
Right, that's
from
right.
us, this is not that,
Yeah.
then you might get enough time that they'll do that. And as I recall, the deal was very, very good. I can't
Wow.
remember what it was, but it was very good.
Yeah.
And it matched because our film, look, I mean, we've been seen, but we haven't been, we're not flooding the world with
Right. Right.
conventions, so they cut us a deal and we milked it out, and it gave it enough of a tone. But listen, if I had, the $1 billion budget and I was completely dedicated to making it perfect, there would have been some great punk rock
Right.
songs in there.
Right.
There would have been some great old classics, 80s, that were inescapable. There would have been some 80s people in there that we would have recognized from the 80s and went, oh yeah.
Did
But
you do music supervisor on that, or
no,
did
we
somebody
didn't
do
have.
that? I didn't really have one officially. I
If
think it was
yeah,
on
exactly. If
Vampire
we did,
Burt. Did you do? I thought I remember seeing somebody doing that.
so
I may be dreaming. I'm confusing with another film.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, there was no real music super.
Right.
It's all
Right.
false. This is one of those
Yeah.
scenarios where it all just
No,
kind of
you don't
falls to
need
me.
it. I know for that.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Oh, I
All
would
right.
have loved it. Are you kidding?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
So again, you have this atmospheric stuff toward the beginning. You have classical music. There's pop cues. A little bit of orchestral. There's a lot of guitar, harmonica, strings for montages. Um, a little bit more classical. Again, I just kind of went through this whole some solo piano and some really intense stuff toward the end as things kind of come together. And then I noticed the score evolves back to like the beginning at the very end over the credits. It almost has a reprise feel to it. So on those decisions on that was in your you had you had a director working with you. Was the director pretty much responsible for developing the score with the composer? Or was that
Yeah, with Eric, I mean, I viewed him, because he's doing a lot of shows, a lot of, and I viewed him as pretty much like, do what you're gonna do. I had input obviously, but
Mhm.
I really, I kind of got on his coattails and rode with him. So music was something that he did. I wanted to kind of side a little bit more towards some of the punk rock experience and stuff
Yeah.
like that. This guy, was a great music person, and I think he actually, I feel like he composed it on his own pretty much,
Nice.
and we slotted it in pretty well. I didn't keep up on all the communication, but suffice it to say, Eric to me was the auteur on this.
Hmm.
He really did take it from the book, and it was meant to be that way. Because my feeling is he's just had an incredible span of experience and career,
Yeah.
and my job was really just to kind of like keep the boat going, and so from taking the book all the way to the final mix and all that stuff,
Right.
he was involved in every step, and that was the conversation. At a certain point I said, hey, so you're a producer? He said, no, no, I don't need that. And I said, it's not about need, it's about what's true to what you've done. You're a
Yeah.
producer on this project. And I actually had to talk him into it. And the final thing I said was, because I know in showbiz, when you're negotiating, no matter how big you are, one of the things that the tactics of negotiation are, show us your previous credit doing the same
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And that's how you can scale up or scale into different areas with credits and or money. And I said, you're going to need this. this is going to be a negotiating tool down the road. They're not going to care that it was a nothing film. They're going to see the credit of producer and they're going to go, okay, he's got 5 producer or 10 producer credits.
Right.
So that's why he ended up doing it. But it was the right thing because he did produce, very rarely, from beginning to end. He was such a part of everything, and that was a big deal.
One of the most interesting choices was during kind of a party where people are kind of dancing. There's actually a really different kind of a soundtrack going on, a dreamy kind of a sequence, which was fascinating to see. It was unexpected. But it kind of made, I started to think about like Risky Business.
Right.
Which has a very atmospheric feel to it. Tangerine Dream, kind of a thing. So
it's neat. You're onto something that I think that's really cool, which is the story through the music.
Yeah.
And that's really neat. It's neat to talk to you in that sense because, there's a lot of kind of tunnels into a story, into a project. And it's really interesting how you're sensitive, you're attentive, you really are to how that works and what that speaks to, and that's a neat thing.
Well, and to be honest, I don't think you can watch a movie once and come up and understand the music side. You're immersed in the story. When you go back through it, you go, oh wow, what an interesting choice. When you're a score composer, you watch the movie 3,000 times, so you're pretty intimate with it, and you have to make those decisions. Am I going with the scene or against it? Am I playing against it?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, again, beautiful film. Really well done. I thought it was just in generally, well acted, well performed, good story, unique, cool sort of stuff for sure. And then we can go to the other side of the rainbow to Vampire Burt's Serenade. And, Ken Roth is R-O-H-T is the director on that.
Yeah, Ken Roth.
Roth, okay, all right.
Yeah.
A raunchy vampire musical with a Zampa zombie.
I think you're turning red.
Yeah, maybe trying to kill a Backstreet Boy vampire. and that's a fun movie. It's a trip. There's just a little bit of blood in it. A teeny bit. Joe Bob Briggs would be proud.
Right.
Buckets of blood or whatever.
Yeah.
Over the top in every possible way. But I am in awe on both of these films, just the fact that you can do this stuff, but that you did a musical, and it's a true musical. I mean, it's not just a couple of songs. People break into song mid-sentence. It's classic. Over the top, kind of a thing with just intense whatever's going on. I'm a fan of what's the show on these days? This the vampire shows that's on. Anyway, the guys from Australia, New Zealand. It's a hilarious show. I can't remember. I got to come back to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, you've probably seen it. So what's the story on that? How did you develop this thing? I mean, where did it come from?
Right. Okay. So Ken Roth is a director, was a theater director in Los Angeles. And if I were to summarize, he managed to do small theater successfully in LA, which is, that's almost as difficult as trying to get an Academy Award. I mean, it's truly incredible that he could pack small theaters, and he did just wonderfully outrageous projects, wonderfully, and I could never do them service. I can sit and try to explain to you, this show he did called the 99-cent show, which literally was costumed entirely from the 99-cent store. And he did a new version every year, and it was incredible. So anyway, he was a really remarkable director and creator, writer, and I always thought it would be really fun to have him direct a movie. And we talked about it a few times. It just couldn't happen, and things didn't line up. And I was also a little nervous about him. He's a little challenging, in some ways for me. And so I was like, and then at one point he came to me and he said, "Oh, I have something I want you to read." And he was incredibly prolific. I mean, shockingly prolific. And he said, "I have something for you to read. It's a short story. It's a vampire musical." And I said, "There is no way I'm going to make a vampire musical. Like, that's just the stupidest thing I've ever heard." And I read it and I went, "Oh my God, this is so good. I don't want to make a short film. Can you make this feature length? Then let's talk about it." So when I say something like that to somebody I'm really accustomed to, I hear from them in a year or two, if I hear from them at all. I think it was literally maybe 2 weeks later, maximum. And he gave me about a 75, 80-page script that I read. And I just was floored. It was good. It was original. It was authentic. It was ballsy. It was over the top. And I kid you not, I'm used to doing many. I really I love having lots of readings. I love people to really feel the work. I love evolving it, and all that stuff. That script that he handed me was one draft away from what we pretty much shot with, and that's just an amazing thing to say about an artist and a creator. So I got him. Kevin Richardson was a friend. I showed him the story. He was intrigued in a really fun, ridiculous way, and I don't even remember how we got Diva. Diva, I think, came through. Oh, Ken Rote had a group that he worked with often at this one theater for years called it became the Bootleg Theater, and so he wanted to bring a lot of those people that he's tried and true and worked with a long time. So we brought some of them, and someone knew Diva, and she wanted to work with Ken, and so it was this really bizarre, crazy, and once again, just this strange coming together of people that wanted to try what we've seen in the theater, in the small theater, those of us that were geeky enough to go to these small theater shows. And we wanted to try to do that in a film, and that's how that sort of evolved. And it was crazy.
Oh, that's extraordinary. We're talking about Diva Zappa, so
Yes,
interesting legacy there.
Yeah, Diva Zappa, and yeah, exactly. I mean, anyone who knew Frank Zappa, it was just remarkable to have, and Kevin Richardson. I mean, I always was so brokenhearted because I kept saying to him over and over, "I'm going to make you a star," because he was so good in this. And I said, "This is going to be the vehicle. You are going to be a movie star." And I'd say it over and over because I just thought he slammed it, and it was so fun to work with. But didn't happen. But it was a really a rip-roaring good time of getting absolutely bonkers. Clearly, as you pointed out, there was never saying no to anything that was audacious, outrageous, hilarious.
I think it may find its audience. I don't know. There's something about it. I think it's one of those. If you started to watch it 3-4 times, you might start picking up details and going, "That's kind of weird." Maybe a slight addiction.
This was the perfect midnight movie for a date or something, and that where they serve alcohol, and
that's what I'm saying. I think it's available.
I have hopes. I always was. And the confession of my ludicrous is that I've always thought each of these films were just going to do so incredibly well, because and that tells you how twisted I am. But I thought the stories, we had lots of challenges because we were budgetarily challenged to the hilt. But the stories were so authentic and so original, and the performances were fantastic. And so I really I did to my discredit always think that these were going to do fantastic right out of the gate. I was going to ride to the top. We were going to take the Academies and throw the Oscar to the ground because it was beneath our station. So anyway.
Well, I took As the Earth Turns, this 1938 thing I produced. We actually entered it in the Oscars in 2019 just to get it out. Yeah. And there's been some repercussions from that, which is kind of
Oh man,
yeah.
funny,
Good
right?
stuff. Good stuff. Anyway,
Good.
so Paul Goldwitz,
Oh
composer.
yeah, he's so well. So now you got to understand, Ken Rote is musically super, um, super talented. Everything was a musical for him, just about. And I'm talking, I couldn't even imagine. I'm guessing he probably did 40 or 50 musicals in a 10-year span, maybe 15-year.
Wow.
And yeah, he's really a phenom. So him working with Paul. Now Paul was a guy I went to high school with, and he was one of the music kids. And he had a band going. I think he even had an album or two out back in the 90s or something. And I got a hold of him and said, hey, what about composing? And I think he'd already been doing it actually quite a bit. He'd been doing TV and Jackass and all these other cool projects. And he said, sure, I'll give it a go. And so basically Ken and him just,
Yeah.
And just locked horns and went to town. And Paul really just, he's just such a talented, multi-talented person.
Yeah.
And so Ken would kind of give very specific direction, but Paul would just fill it out. And that's what he did.
Yeah, there's a lot of music. It's wall to wall. So, and just I look at the challenge of recording that stuff, and there's traditions of re-recording. You generally do the songs ahead and then people mouth stuff, but I think you did a lot of stuff on stage too. I got the feeling some of it was I don't know, it's hard to tell, and that's a good thing if you can't tell the difference on there.
Yeah.
So,
we did not do a stage. We had a recording of the singers in a booth that we had probably 2 hours.
Right.
Paul would do, I'm trying to think if he ever, I think he did all the music, himself. I'm pretty sure, close to it. Yeah, he might have gotten a drummer or was drumming at some point. I can't remember, but it was just, and the music, for me, I just loved his music. It was just so full, and he really did kind of do it
got
up.
A wide variety too. I mean, it's not just one thing. There's a lot going on there. Wow. Yeah. Well,
then I'll tell you this though. This was kind of interesting. So Kevin Richardson, the last piece, he wanted horns, and he said, I want horns on this last piece, and we were like, oh God, me, I'm like, dude, get a kazoo. Like, we don't have any horns. What are you talking about? And he said, I'm going to get my guys, from something that he knew them or he worked with them or something. And Ken Rote said, I just want to, I think he got a really ridiculous cheap price, few $100 or something ridiculous, that they would do some kind of horn section for that last song. And Ken Rote, I remember saying, no, I want to get him that. That's the least, we can do. And I was great. So ended up doing it. And I still, to this day, I love watching the ending where he just kind of riffs in the end and the music and those horns were beautiful.
That's the thing. That ending comes out of nowhere. It's like, what the hell? What time warp did we just go in? And that was wonderful, because I'm a big jazz guy, and I'm thinking, yeah, man,
good for you.
Exactly. Comes out of nowhere.
That was
cool. Yeah, that was great.
Kevin's final choice was like, put some horns there.
Why not?
So,
Why not?
Yeah. So there's the final music collaboration.
All right, so to kind of finish up some clean bookkeeping here.
Yeah.
So getting away from specific projects, filmmakers and composer combinations. Anybody comes to mind that you've kind of to that you like?
Man, when you watch certain films where the music just really, really does it, and I've always been so impressed by that. And I'm trying to think who, there's a lot of the cliches, and I have felt that there's certain directors that musically just always get it. And I have not felt, and I'm going to be honest, that I have always been one of those people that is necessarily the most talent. I know what works, and I know when it's through the roof.
Yeah.
And I wish I had a finer touch with that. I've always felt like if I were, hired to do some big thing, that's one of the things that I would be very careful about, is who I hired that can just make the movie so good with such a diverse palette. I'm interested in, obviously, I like mixing. I like mixing and matching. I'm not so interested in, like, making something that's all just classical music and all strings or whatever.
Right.
Which I know in some ways maybe the right project, but in general. So there's certain people that have always blown my mind. What's that guy? God, you're gonna hate me. Who's Danny Elfman?
Oh yeah.
Like that guy. And yeah, he puts his signature on it, which is clearly him, and so it's got to be the right thing. But when you listen, you really listen, you really hear this person who's just can get within that emotion and the timings and things like that.
He's an original for sure.
Yeah, and always original, and always him, overly him, maybe. One argument could be that I always know when I'm hearing Danny Elfman.
He's not as much as Chameleon. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that, but there's been like certain movies. I'm trying to remember some knockouts and where I just know, and I'm so aware that the music has taken over and made the movie great. And I guess that's the beauty for me, has always been those films that do that. And I don't know their names. I've never been. The notion that I will ever get to work with them is not.
Well, you never know.
Yeah, exactly.
And Elfman, came from Oingo Boingo or something. He was kind of a rock god for a while, and that's an increasing thing. Even what are the two guys? I can't remember them. They've been doing a lot of stuff now. Gone.
Well, strangely, also, so I have a buddy who I grew up with in high school, who he runs one of the biggest stages in town for composers. So they go to him and they say, hey, we want to do this, and he gets all the people together and does it all the time. And to talk to, like, he would be, so if I got any kind of budget, and I have always viewed music at, everything is important, but music is important. And I would go to him. I would sit down and go to him. He is encyclopedic. He's ridiculous, and he's worked with every human out there. And for whatever it's been, 15, 20 years that he's, doing this high-end film and TV mixing. And it's been, I would go to him and I would sit down for probably 2 days and just sit and go, okay, teach me, who do I need to watch? How do I do this? And the usual thing is, like, let's get the biggest songs that are already released, from major artists. And that's never been so appealing to me. I've always been.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, that happens in big movies over credits, but that's about it. And that becomes almost a tie-in on a marketing plan. But one of the great lessons that most of us as composers or songwriters that are trying to place our music is not to push that our music is perfect for a project. It's what's got to serve the picture. And if you have something that happens to serve a particular film or TV show or something, great. But in the end, the filmmaker has to make the choice of what's necessary to move the narrative forward or give it, whatever.
Well, and this is kind of old-fashioned, right? Because right now I have another friend who's kind of a big rock guy, and he has recorded for an online service where he just puts like 20 to 30-second snips of music. He's probably done 20,000 of them. He's loaded off of that, and people are just getting those. But I'm really curious, who's like your favorite? Like, who do you look to and go, this guy's a god, like, who, or woman who?
Well, and who I was thinking about regarding interesting modern composers, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross. And they're the ones, what was their group? What the hell is the name of their group?
Nine Inch Nails, I think.
Nine Inch
right?
Nails, yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, they've been doing a ton of film scores, and they did Mank, which is a great movie about Mankiewicz, Hollywood movie,
Yeah.
and they did a lot of jazz and big band, but it still has a lot of their stuff in it. It's like a weird hybrid. The difference is I can actually kind of demonstrate this, that the jazz kind of has a lot of chord changing. And what they would do is do the same groove, and just stay on it. And it was less harmonic stuff going on in general. Yeah. And that's kind of a sign more of where they came from,
right?
In popular music,
right?
And more kind of, especially them, they're more atmospheric, so they're thinking more soundscape.
Yeah.
Traditional score. Hans Zimmer is another one that doesn't necessarily modulate into many chords, but kind of goes for that. But he's got teams of people that can do that. So the modern composers go all over. They can do tons of different things that you're unexpected at this point. For me, I grew up. I tell people that Bernard Herrmann is kind of somebody that I keep coming back to, mainly because of War of the Worlds and all these.
Wow.
Was it him that did that one? But Day of the Earth Stood Still, and all that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
There's this, and when I did As the Earth Turns, I used a lot of Herrmann-esque things. Now I just watched a film. I'm going to hopefully interview a guy, The Berlin Bride, this experimental film on indie rights. I'm kind of trying to work with as many indie rights people as I can.
Yeah.
And he did a marvelous movie in Germany, and he has a very Bernard Herrmann-esque score.
Wow.
And it has
cool.
It's a lot of vibraphone and stuff like this, and these kind of creepy chords. I'd have to think about it. I actually figured out Herrmann-esque for what I was doing. Twilight. If you listen to a lot of Twilight Zone episodes from the '60s, Herrmann did some of that stuff.
Wow.
And there's very key stuff. Anyway,
so for you, kind of, you find more traditional inspiration in general.
Well, I mean, I love Zappa. I love all sorts of things. So to me, I don't even know what I like anymore. I mean, it's just everything under the sun is pretty much in my thing. But if as a composer, I'm drawn to music that has depth to it, music that I could listen to away from the movie and enjoy.
Yeah.
That's kind of a marker. That's why John Williams music kind of comes to mind, because it's like, man, you could just... Close Encounters is like the most enjoyable film in my mind musically. The last 10 minutes he did of that movie, he didn't have the scene to compose to.
Wow.
And that's because they didn't have it done yet, and it was pre-computer stuff. So he had to work it out, and that's why it has this kind of that sort of thing. Why it has almost an orchestral flavor to it, and that's like a Kubrick 2001 thing. So to me, those are the moments when the music surpasses score, and it's not just background under dialogue, and all of a sudden it becomes a character in it. There's themes, and people are in Star Wars, Wagner or whatever.
I mean, for me, that's amazing. And when the music becomes a character, that's such an incredible experience, because it helps the narrative. And I find that most directors don't necessarily know how to do that really well, and I find a lot of composers don't. A lot of them will kind of hit things on the head at the wrong time, but I am getting better at it. I do care about it a lot, obviously, and it's one of those areas I really look forward to becoming a master. Time.
It takes time, and you have to have. I mean, one reason I'm doing these podcasts is I want to get to know filmmakers better, so that when I talk to them, I understand their. It's like the director and the composer need to understand each other's vocabulary as much as possible, and we tend to come from different worlds. If I talk about a C minor chord, you're going, I don't care what a C minor chord is. I want it dark.
Right. Right.
That's dark.
Well, I'll tell you, just from the outside, like even when you were saying, I don't know what I like anymore, I thought that's the guy for me, because that openness and that, like, just that it's a terrible curse, because anything is possible, but it's so much fun to run in the field with those kind of people in general. And this, this is that kind of experience where I'm hunting you. I want you to work for free on one of my films that we probably will never make a penny on. And I say things like, hey, you get to try whatever you want, and bring it. We were going to go for it. And we're just going to try to hodgepodge and make this thing work. And that's usually where I get the people that have a passion, which clearly you have a passion for music, for this thing that we're talking about, which is really
well. And I as a kid, I started with Super 8 film, and then I went into music. So it's funny, I'm coming back to film late in life.
Yeah,
I'm having a good time with it. So
Super 8 film, man.
Learning about filmmaking and distribution and all of this has been phenomenal. To really
well, and it's changed. It's changing. I mean, I've lectured internationally at film festivals on filmmaking, on performing, and all kinds of things. And the thing I always come to on the filmmaking is, look, first of all, we used to do, pre-production, then production, then post-production, and then we were done. But really now, it's distribution is the next phase, and it is in our book now. The old days of I'm going to go try and sell my film kind of went away, and it's now distribution and social media, and that is an interest, and that playbook's changing almost every 2 or 3 years. So it's a very different world. I feel fortunate in some ways, because if you have the time and the energy, you can do it. But it's changing. So I honestly, my suggestion in general has always been to people, like, just do more. Keep doing. I always say that, I have these, whenever I lecture at the festivals, I have, on the right side, I have all the students that are trying to, like, make it. On the left side, I have all the filmmakers that are jaded and trying to figure out if I'm a jerk or not. And I would say, to the ones that are kind of trying to cross over to that pro level, I would say, doing what they want to do, whatever that is. If they're stepping into directing or stepping into act, whatever it is that they're trying to step into, I would say, go work for free with your favorite person. Go, or get as close to them as you can, and do it 3 or 4 times. And then you've got a master's degree in that thing. And there's something to that. And then that's kind of my own thing, is I'm not going to sit around and wait for showbiz to turn around and say, hey, do you want to do something? My thing is, like, well, get busy and start doing things, and see where it goes. And I have to say, although I have never become famous nor rich on my projects, I have had such a fantastic time working with such incredibly different, risk-taking people. And for whatever it's worth, that's what I would wish on you, is, your openness is really, it's cool that you're interested. And I hope you just get out there and knock some out, because I'm sure you're going to do very, very well if you haven't already done it already.
Well, I got my projects for sure.
Good.
And I've tried to turn that around, as opposed to waiting for other people, just doing things on my own. So
exactly.
And in the world of composing, you can actually write music for music libraries and have carte blanche, do whatever you want. And there's a need for it out there somewhere. So and I am eclectic in what I do. I am a chameleon, so I enjoy that challenge on there. But there's nothing like scoring to picture.
Yeah.
My favorite, when I was a kid and I had silent Super 8, that was the thing. I couldn't synchronize the music.
Right.
It was driving me bananas. I had a record player going with it. And I'd have to time it, and it just...
Yeah, that was...
Now I have the ability to do that, and it freaks me out. I'm going, wow, I can actually land a note right when this guy goes like that,
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, I would be really interested to see your finished projects, because I have a feeling you're gonna do some interesting stuff, and your own projects. That's really fun too. I always think, like, I can't get enough of it. It's almost like that poor kid that's become addicted to the worst thing in the world. She's like, I keep wanting to tell more stories. I love it.
One of the things I did over the pandemic is Roger Corman on Facebook announced he was going to put on the Roger Corman first and hopefully last pandemic film festival. And he invited people to make films that were under 2 minutes, and they had to be done in their home with their home, with anybody in the home and their phone. That was it.
Wow, how awesome.
And I made a movie using all the stuff I had, including literally stock films from the film estate that I'm involved in. And I did everything. I directed, edited, acted, just totally. There was nobody else involved whatsoever.
Cool. Yeah.
And I thought, wow, this is an experience.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually got an award.
That's exactly it.
What the heck?
Hell yeah. Corman Award? That's like...
Well, not from him. No, sorry.
Oh.
No. I don't know who won it, but, there was hundreds of people, of course, went after it just to do it.
Yeah.
Why not?
It was that's the perfect thing. I'm really all about that. Yeah. Shut up and do stuff. Let's just do stuff. I love stopping, trying to figure out how I'm going to get, Sony to buy some. I love just like, screw it. Let's just get our phones out and make a movie.
That's right.
So yeah.
What's your goal in the next 6 months or so?
So for me, the pandemic turned me to documentaries. So I have 3 feature documentaries that are getting closer to being finished. And then I have a feature that is just batty as all hell, if you could imagine. And I hope to get to that probably. I got to kind of wait for a little more pandemic settling down. I don't want to get shut down while I'm shooting something, because I still do have to work with the union and want to. But yeah, so I have one sitting in the wings, and I think I'm just going to be one of those batty guys that's just going to be making a feature every 2 to 4 years, until whatever my demise is. So that's what it's looking like. I will live to torture the world. I always think hopefully I'm going to be like Van Gogh, and in 100 years, my films are going to sell for the most money ever.
What's that?
I said,
sorry. Oh,
well done.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Kenneth. We'll wrap this interview up for the moment, and good luck with everything you have. And I would encourage everybody out there to see Vampire Burt's Serenade and also Confessions of a Teenage Jesus Jerk. Both are on IMDb.
IMDb.
Free.
Amazon,
right?
That Tubi TV is free also with some commercials. It's all over.
Yeah, I haven't. Mine is on. I don't think mine thing's on Tubi yet, but it's. I can't remember, but it's IMDb is interesting because that's you watch it with commercials, but you don't have to worry about, paying the Amazon man anything. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, but check it out, folks. Kenneth Hughes, thank you very much, and hopefully
thank you.
Talk soon.
Real interesting. Good luck.
Thank you.